What is good, YouTube? My name is Velikan. In this video, we are taking a look at the tier 8 relics for Leagues 5. This is the combat relic tier. We're going to start off with Last Stand. If you pick Last Stand, you get something called the Last Stand ability. Wow. If damage would reduce you to 0 HP, you are reduced to 1 HP instead. Your combat stats are instantly boosted to 255, but begin draining rapidly back down to their base level. For the next 16 ticks after this ability is activated, you cannot be reduced to 0 HP. When the effect ends, all incoming damage is nullified and the player is healed based on the damage they dealt over the last 16 ticks. Once this ability is used, it cannot be used again until you die or 3 minutes have passed. In case you are wondering, 16 ticks is 9.6 seconds. It doesn't really do much. This is the first thing I really want to say. It doesn't really do much if you're not dying. So I'm thinking about Slayer, for instance. You're probably not dying there. Last Stand doesn't do much for you there. So Last Stand requires a specific way to play. And there's two ways to play, really. You can sit behind a pillar in Colosseum for 3 minutes and abuse it that way. I think that type of playstyle is a bit of a trap. It's better to just learn the content. Much better, actually. You'll be faster and you'll be better in the main game after Leagues. So I think that's a mistake. You also, if you want to do this, you better not die twice against enemies like Sol or Zuck in the Inferno. It does help if you're the type to perhaps misstep only once or twice, because if you're that type of player, it will definitely help you. You're allowed basically to misstep once, then you might get killed, then you get Last Stand, and you might be able to crawl back from the depths of hell that way. The second way to play, which I predict is going to be the way to play, is to face tank all the stuff and abuse the boost to blast through certain mechanics. Let's say you do 25 DPS in Leagues. In 9.6 seconds, you are doing about 240 damage, not even considering the 255 boost. So if you take a look at the right side of our screen, I calced a Tumakin versus Zuck. I did it in max mage gear without a heart, but don't look at the numbers themselves, look at the difference. So at level 99, you're doing about 29 DPS. At level 255, you're doing almost 86 DPS. So it's only for a short while, but your max hit is 307. That is crazy. What I'm saying is the 255 boost will temporarily make you do Dumbo damage, and you'll be doing more than your regular DPS times 9.6 seconds. That's what I'm trying to say here. People are obviously talking about abusing Darox that way, and one last thing, in the wilderness perhaps, it might be the biggest no-you relic ever, so that might be funny. In terms of raw output, I think Last Stand is going to be the best. It'll be great in raids, as you can die deliberately and then whip out some big damage. In raids, there's also some forced downtime between bosses, so Last Stand isn't hurt as much by its cooldown. I think Last Stand is not strong in repeatedly farmed content, such as God Wars Dungeon. Like, the boss is just going to die super fast, and then you can only abuse or use Last Stand once every 3 minutes anyway, so it's going to be awkward there. And what I predict is I think we're going to see some clips of people blasting through certain bosses, and specifically Soul Heredit comes to mind, because it's like the perfect boss for Last Stand. It has 1200 HP, I believe. Maybe some Echo bosses too, being abused with the Last Stand. And the reason why I think this, and the reason why I say this, is you'll be able to die at a certain HP threshold and then just blast them down. If you can kill the boss in 9.6 seconds, you might be able to ignore any final mechanics that they have. So this might be pretty damn huge, and it will also be huge quality of life at very specific content. And that's why I'm specifically mentioning Soul Heredit. Other bosses, it may apply as well. Guardian. Upon choosing this relic, you will receive the Guardian Horn. This item will allow you to summon a powerful Guardian Thrall lasting 30 minutes. The Guardian will attack your target with whatever style it is weak to. When you are in multi, it will cast AoE attacks if the target is weak to range or magic. It has some very specific stats that we don't really care about. It doesn't work in PvP, and it does work in the Gauntlet. That's pretty damn nice, actually. It is by far the most passive relic out of the three. The Guardian is 3.75 DPS, so it increases your DPS by that amount flat. And basically the Guardian helps everywhere, so that's pretty good. It is also perhaps very useful in certain areas. So, for instance, Meliers in Inferno, I was planning on a route that included Varlamore, Wilderness, and then a melee route. I calced my best ranged gear setup at only 10 DPS. If I would have picked Guardian, I'm looking at a 37.5% damage boost there, so that's pretty big. It also might help in solo top, specifically the Nilo room. I am not 100% sure how this thing is going to behave in that room. I have not picked Guardian last league, so I don't know the specifics. I see people talking about it in the Discord. I looked it up specifically. No one is really disagreeing with people saying that Guardian will help it at the Nilo room, so maybe they're correct. But honestly, I am not 100% sure. Maybe someone in the comments will be able to fill in on that. I like Guardian better for learners. So if you're trying to learn content, I think Guardian is better because Guardian forces you to play correctly. So this is in direct comparison to Last Stand. And last year we had something called the 2-tick Guardian spam, which was more or less an exploit, allowing Guardians to do more damage than they intended to be doing. And I think this has been fixed. This has not been confirmed by any authoritative source, so I don't know this for a fact, but it's been a thing. If you search it up on the Discord, people are pretty much saying that it's fixed, and I hope they're right. Specialist. You gain the following benefits to special attacks. They all cost 20% energy and they have plus 100% accuracy. If you fail an accuracy roll with a special attack, you gain 10% special attack energy. Whenever you kill an NPC with it, it restores 15% special attack energy. Okay. This is obviously good for spec weapons. Duh. So ZCB is probably still best DPS in the game. You can send 550 damage right from the start. The Dog Sword and the Khopesh, of course, come to mind for a hefty amount of DPS, more than a Scythe. And keep in mind that you can still swap into a T-Bow, a Scythe, or a Tumican after specking, so it's not like you have to choose between one or the other. I do have to admit, though, if you're swinging your Scythe around and you are a specialist, and maybe it doesn't feel that great, but still. Then there is, of course, the Volatile Staff and perhaps even the Eldritch Staff. They might be worth it, but it's pretty awkward. The volatile specking DPS is actually quite high, but it's a difficult weapon to get. Eldritch only really works for prayer restore, so it's probably not needed or worth taking specialist for. Also, and this is actually the reason why I think volatile staff is kind of awkward. The drop rate on the volatile orb is a little bit tricky. So you're going to be farming Nightmare a lot, and I don't know. You'd be wise to well, it's in Mauritania anyway. I was going to say you'd be wise to bring your Tumican along as well, but it's in Mori, and Mori drops Tumicans, so you should be fine. Din's Bulwark. Oh, actually, before we move on to the Din's Bulwark, one more thing about the volatile staff. If you go dry and you do have a Tumican, if you go dry and volatile, keep in mind that you might mess up and now you're running a Tumican and a specialist relic and never getting that volatile, right? So that's going to be a little bit awkward. Then moving on to Din's Bulwark, killing a mob gives 15% spec back, so that might be funny with the Dinny B. Then Voidwaker, Elder Maul, Webweaver, arguably not worth taking specialist for. I cannot get my calcs any higher than a regular side swing, so I don't think it's worth picking picking specialist with these weapons. Voidwaker is probably the strongest out of these three. I don't think Dclaws are worth it either. The DDS, however, is actually a decent spec weapon too. So if you spec DPS, if you compare that to just main handing the scythe, they're actually equal. So if you're doing, let's say, God Wars Dungeon and you are a specialist, definitely bring your DDS. If you don't have a better spec weapon, that is, but DDS very strong. And then specialist, of course, ties into your region picks. As Garni and Wilderness come to mind, there's probably some other places, maybe Kourend. You just have to know whether or not specialist helps you, and that's how you're going to value this relic. I do want to say out loud, though, the Khopesh or the Dog Sword specking might be a little disappointing. I don't know what exactly I'm trying to say with this, but all I'm trying to say is don't overvalue things. I see people saying, yeah, I'm just going to spec 5 times. Well, yes, but at the same time, you're not going to blow that much out of the water. And then if you compare it to bosses you can actually blow up the water, like Bandos, for instance, he only has 255 HP. A scythe blows him out of the water too. So I'm not really sure how to value this. That said, I do like Specialist. I kind of want to go Kopesh with it, but maybe people are overvaluing it a little bit. I'm not sure. But it doesn't really matter, actually, because I feel this tier is difficult to judge. They all complement a different playstyle, and that's why I'm saying it doesn't really matter. It's a matter of preference, right? It's just a simple matter of preference. So for Last Stand goers, you'll be chasing the biggest numbers. With the 255 boost, you get the biggest numbers. I think Last Stand is going to be strong versus relatively large bosses, and I like, what am I saying when I say big bosses? I'm saying like bosses that have more health than Bandos, for instance, God Wars Dungeons, right? So Soul Herited, maybe Echo bosses, I think it's going to be strong there. It's going to be decent in raids, but you have to be willing to deliberately die. And it's not as strong in areas in like God Wars Dungeons. So like if you go as Garnia and you don't really have any other areas with a lot of bosses in them, Last Stand might not be for you. Last Stand will definitely allow for certain cheeses. I am almost 100% certain of it. We're going to see some clips and people are going to blow through certain mechanics and you'll be wishing that you had Last Stand instead of something else. Then the last thing I do want to say about Last Stand, I don't like it for learners, but opinions may vary. Maybe learners can pivot into cheese instead. What am I saying? I'm saying that if you're learning and you're thinking, oh, I'm going to use Last Stand to learn, turns out you can't really learn things properly, so you're going to have to learn the content properly anyway, then you can still abuse Last Stand for cheesing. Because I think for cheesing, it will definitely be a thing. Like, once the boss gets down to like 400 health, you happen to die, and then you blast 400 health in like 9 seconds, and then it's done, either way. So Last Stand is just going to be strong, and it's okay for learners. It's not going to be bad or anything. Then Guardian, of course, by far the most passive, and it just helps everywhere. I think if you want to chill, Guardian is the play. I personally don't really like Guardian. Having to click an item in order to get like a mob that helps you a little bit is kind of, I don't know. But at the same time, just click it once every 30 minutes. It's fine. And then Specialist, of course, is only useful with certain weapons, right? So the real conclusion is it's a matter of preference. And I know that's a little bit of a not satisfying answer, but I can't do much better than this. It's just preference. Anyway, I hope I've covered it all. I hope I haven't missed anything. It is like 2 a.m. on the Tuesday night before Leagues launch, so trying to get some more videos out, and hopefully I'm not missing much. Either way, thank you for watching, and see you next video. Bye-bye.